You know that moment it's like 11:45 on a Sunday night, and you're lying in bed, but you're not sleeping. You're doing math, not real math, panic math. You're adding up rent, the car payment, that electricity bill you forgot about, groceries for the week, and that copay from a doctor's visit 3 weeks ago that somehow cost more than your dinner out. And you're trying to figure out if you can make it to Friday without touching the credit card again. Your phone's still in your hand because 5 minutes ago you were scrolling through apartment listings, not because you're moving, but because you needed to know, is this what it costs everywhere now? Is this normal? And you scrolled and every number felt like someone was slowly turning a dial in your chest. Then your partner shifted in bed and you locked the screen because, and this is the part nobody talks about, you didn't want them to see what you were looking at, not because it's embarrassing, because if they saw it, you'd have to have the conversation, the one where you both pretend you're fine and then go quiet for the rest of the night. Here's the thing, you're not bad with money. You're not reckless. You probably haven't bought anything truly unnecessary in weeks, and yet every month feels like you're trying to pour a gallon of water into a cup that holds maybe 3/4. So what happened? When did a normal income stop being enough for a normal life? That's what I spent the last few weeks trying to figure out. And the number I landed on, the actual salary, you need to live what most people would call a comfortable life in 2026. It's not what I expected. It's not what you'll expect either. And the reason it's that number has almost nothing to do with avocado toast or streaming subscriptions or whatever easy target the internet's blaming this week. I'm Malik, and I spend probably too much time thinking about the gap between what money should buy and what it actually buys right now. Not from a textbook angle. More like a stayed up running spreadsheets until 2 in the morning, and now I need to tell somebody angle. So if any of this ends up clarifying the weird pressure you've been feeling lately, maybe consider subscribing. No pressure, only if it actually helps. But before I show you the math, I want to sit in the feeling for a second, because the math won't hit the way it should unless you recognize where you are right now. You're at the grocery store, you have a list, a short one, and you're doing that thing where you round up every item in your head as you put it in the cart because you need the running total to stay under a number. Not a budget number. Just the number where you won't feel that spike of dread at checkout. You skip the brand you actually like and grab the store brand, fine. You skip the fresh salmon and grab canned tuna, fine. You tell yourself it's the same thing. It's not the same thing and you know it, but the trade-off feels necessary, so you make it without even sighing anymore. That's the part that gets me. You've stopped sighing. You've normalized the squeeze so completely that you don't even register it as a loss. It's just Tuesday now. Or here's another one. A friend texts the group chat about dinner Saturday night. Your first thought isn't, that sounds great. Your first thought is a dollar amount. You're scanning the restaurant's menu in your head, estimating what the cheapest entree costs, factoring in tax and tip, and calculating whether saying yes means you have to skip something else this week. And sometimes you say yes anyway and just eat less than you want to, and sometimes you say, I'm actually so busy this weekend, sorry, which is a lie, and you hate that you've become a person who lies to avoid a $40 dinner. And if you have kids, it's worse, because then the math isn't just about you. It's about whether you can afford the field trip, or the birthday party gift, or new shoes, because theirs are a half size too small, and you can see the crease in their forehead when they walk. And you do afford it, every time, because that's what you do. But you afford it by pulling from somewhere else, and that somewhere else was already running on fumes. This is what living below the comfort line actually looks like. It doesn't look like poverty, it doesn't look dramatic. It looks like a fully employed adult doing mental subtraction in every room of their life. But here's where things get interesting, because that constant math, that running calculator in the back of your skull, it's not just stressful, it's actually changing the way you think. There's a concept in behavioral economics that I've started calling the bandwidth tax. Researchers at Princeton and Harvard, this goes back to work by Sendil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir, found that when people feel like their financial resources aren't enough to meet their demands, it doesn't just make them anxious. It literally reduces their cognitive capacity. Not because they're less intelligent, because their brain is spending so much processing power on the problem of not having enough that there's less left over for everything else. Planning, patience, creativity, the ability to think long-term. All of it gets taxed. Which means, and think about this for a second, the person who most needs to make excellent financial decisions is neurologically the least equipped to make them, not because of character, because of math. The math is eating their bandwidth. And it shows up in observable, physical ways. You're more likely to say yes to a bad deal when you're financially stressed, a payday loan, a buy now, pay later scheme. A lease you know isn't great because your brain is in triage mode. Triage mode isn't about optimizing, it's about surviving the next 72 hours. You're more likely to eat worse, sleep worse, avoid opening mail, and here's the one that really stings. You're more likely to snap at the people you love over small things. Not because you're a bad partner or parent, but because your emotional reserves got spent doing invisible math all day. Now, researchers have also found that people under financial stress shift into what's called a concrete mindset. They focus on what's directly in front of them, like which bill to pay this week, and lose the ability to think abstractly about the future. That's not a personality flaw. That's a survival adaptation misfiring in a modern economy. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do when resources feel scarce. Tunnel in on the immediate threat. Except the immediate threat never ends, because the bills come every month, so you're permanently locked in short-term survival mode while the world keeps telling you to plan for retirement in 40 years. It's like asking someone to compose a symphony while their house is on fire. There's a flip side to this, and it matters. When people cross a certain income threshold, not rich, just sufficient something, shifts that goes way beyond the dollar amount. They negotiate differently, they sleep differently, they stop rehearsing excuses for social invitations. They carry themselves differently at work, because when you're not terrified of losing your job, you can actually advocate for yourself in it. One of the most underrated benefits of financial adequacy isn't what you buy. It's who you become when the survival calculator in your brain finally shuts off. Your creativity comes back. Your patience comes back. Your ability to be generous with your time and attention comes back, because you're not spending it all on fear. So when I say the salary you need to live comfortably, I'm not talking about luxury. I'm talking about the income at which the bandwidth tax stops stealing your life. That's the real threshold we're calculating, not comfort as in fancy, comfort as in cognitive freedom. All right, let's run the numbers, and I'm going to be specific, because vague averages are how the system keeps you confused. Let's take a real scenario. A couple, both working, 2 kids. They live in a mid-tier American metro, think Columbus, Ohio, or Raleigh, North Carolina, or maybe Salt Lake City. Not San Francisco, not New York. A place people move to because it's supposed to be affordable. Their rent is $1,700 a month for a 3-bedroom apartment. That's not extravagant. That's roughly what the market commands right now for a family-sized rental in a neighborhood where the schools don't make you nervous. Groceries. Family of 4. They're not eating organic everything. They're not buying fancy snacks. They're doing store brand where it makes sense, cooking most meals at home, packing lunches. $900 a month. Some months it's $1,000. Let's say $950 as a baseline. Car payments and transportation. 2 cars, because both parents commute and public transit isn't an option in most mid-tier metros. Between payments, insurance, which, by the way, jumped nearly 50% between 2022 and 2024 before it barely stabilized, gas, and maintenance, you're looking at about $1,100 a month combined. And that's with modest vehicles, nothing flashy. Health insurance. Even with employer coverage, the average family's out-of-pocket premiums plus deductibles and copays run about $700 a month when you factor in the stuff insurance doesn't fully cover: the dental visit, the kid's prescription, the imaging that somehow isn't in network. Utilities. Electric, gas, water, internet, phone plans. For 2 adults, call it $400 a month. Some months more, in summer or winter, depending on the region. Childcare or after-school programs. Even with both kids in school, you need some form of coverage for the gap between the school bell and when the parents get home. That's another $600 to $800 a month depending on the setup. So far we're at, let me add this up, $1,700 plus $950 plus $1,100 plus $700 plus $400 plus let's say $700 for childcare. That's $5,550 a month. And we haven't covered a single dollar of savings, retirement, clothing, household supplies, a birthday present, a broken appliance, a vet bill, a single-family outing, or the occasional coffee that's supposed to make Tuesday bearable. Add modest estimates for all of that: $200 for household and personal care, $150 for clothing spread across the year, $300 for miscellaneous, and the tiny emergencies that aren't really emergencies but cost money anyway, and you're at roughly $6,200 a month in baseline spending. No debt repayment included, no student loan payments included, no retirement contribution, no real emergency fund building. Now, $6,200 a month is $74,400 a year just in spending, but you don't spend pre-tax money, do you? To actually take home $74,400, depending on the state, you need to earn somewhere between $93,000 and $98,000 before taxes. And that's before a single dollar goes to a retirement account. You know, the thing everyone tells you you're supposed to be maxing out. Add a modest 10% retirement contribution, which, by the way, most financial planners would call barely adequate. and the gross income needed for this family jumps to roughly $105,000 to $110,000. Split between two earners, that's $52,000 to $55,000 each, and that's for mid-tier metro comfortable, not coastal comfortable. Now here's the gut punch. The median household income in the United States right now sits around $80,000 to $84,000, depending on which data set you trust. Which means, think about it this way, the typical American household is earning somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 less than what it actually takes to live without the bandwidth tax in a city that isn't even expensive. That gap isn't a lifestyle problem, it's a structural canyon. You could eliminate every subscription, skip every vacation, brew every cup of coffee at home for the rest of your life, and you still wouldn't bridge a $25,000 annual shortfall through discipline alone. That's not a spending problem you can frugal your way out of. That's an income problem dressed up as a character flaw. And if you're a single earner, a single parent, the Economic Policy Institute recently estimated that a single adult in 2026 needs upward of $106,000 to live comfortably. In California, that number crosses $160,000. Even in the cheapest states, West Virginia, Mississippi, estimates suggest you need close to $80,000. One person, no kids. $80,000 just to breathe without the calculator running in the back of your head. Let me put that in a different frame. If you started working at age 22 and earned the national median personal income of around $45,000 to $50,000 for your entire career, you would not at any point cross the comfort threshold in any state in the country. Not one. You would spend your entire working life below the line where your brain gets to stop doing panic math. That's not a personal failure, that's an engineered outcome. Which brings me to who benefits from the gap. Because here's what, nobody in any transaction has an incentive to tell you the discomfort is the product. Every industry touching your finances benefits from you being just stressed enough to make reactive decisions, but not so broke that you stop spending entirely. The auto insurance industry doesn't profit when you shop around calmly. It profits when you panic renew because you forgot the deadline and can't afford to miss a day of coverage. The credit card industry doesn't profit when you pay in full. It profits when you carry a balance because you had to put the car repair on plastic. The rental market doesn't profit from stability. It profits from the fact that you can't save enough for a down payment, so you keep renting, so your landlord's equity grows while yours doesn't. And then there's the employer side. Companies benefit from the gap too, because a financially insecure employee doesn't negotiate. They don't push back on unreasonable hours. They don't leave when they should. The discomfort is leverage. Not through malice, most managers don't think about it this way, but through structure. If your employees are always 2 bad months from crisis, they are functionally captive. You don't need to lock the door. You just need to keep the hallway uncomfortable enough that the exit looks scarier than staying. The healthcare system runs on the same principle. When your insurance is tied to your employer, your health becomes collateral for your obedience. You don't stay at a miserable job because you love the work. You stay because your kid needs braces, and the COBRA payments would eat your savings in 3 months. That's not a benefit package. That's a leash with a dental plan. The whole system is arranged so that normal means anxious. Normal means carrying a car payment you technically can't afford because you need the car to get to the job that doesn't pay you enough to save for the car. Normal means renting an apartment that eats 35% to 40% of your income because the only way to pay less is to move somewhere with no jobs. Normal means putting retirement on hold because today's bills won't wait. And here's the asymmetry that should make your blood pressure rise. Every single entity in that cycle profits, whether your decision works out for you or not. The lender gets paid regardless. The insurer gets paid regardless. The landlord gets paid regardless. You are the only participant in this system who bears all the downside risk. Everyone else gets a guaranteed cut. And the truly irrational choice, the one culture frames as weird or extreme, is the person who looks at all of this and says, "I'm not playing." The one who drives the older car, lives below their means, refuses the upgrade, and puts the difference into something that compounds. That person gets called cheap by people who are quietly drowning. The weird person is the only one doing the math correctly. Let me give you a line you can take with you, because I've been thinking about this for weeks, and I think it captures something most people feel but can't articulate. The person in your life who looks like they have the most money almost certainly has the least freedom, and the person who looks like they're not keeping up might be the only one who's actually getting ahead. Visible wealth and actual security are almost perfectly inversely correlated for the middle class. The leased SUV in the driveway is not a sign of prosperity. It's a monthly obligation wearing a fresh coat of wax. The modest sedan that's been paid off for 3 years? That car is buying its owner something no lease ever will: the ability to survive a job loss, to say no to a bad offer, to sleep through the night without doing panic math. That's not frugality. That's strategy wearing plain clothes. So here's what I want to leave you with. And I'm not talking about tactics right now. I'm talking about permission. If you've been looking at the numbers and feeling like you're falling behind, I need you to hear this. You are not behind. The game moved. The goalposts were dragged 30 yards downfield while you were doing everything right, and nobody sent you a memo. The salary that would have been comfortable 10 years ago genuinely isn't anymore. Not because you failed, but because housing climbed faster than wages, healthcare climbed faster than wages, insurance climbed faster than wages, childcare climbed faster than wages, and every one of those industries had a lobby and a marketing budget, and you had a paycheck and a prayer. So, if you're making $80,000 and feeling like it should be enough, it should be. It used to be. It's not your fault that it isn't. And if you're making $50,000 and wondering how anyone survives, the honest answer is that most people at that income are surviving on credit and adrenaline, and nobody is talking about it because the shame keeps everyone quiet. What I'm asking you to do, and I'm asking, not telling, is to stop measuring your financial health against what your parents' generation called normal, because that normal is extinct. Build from where you actually are. If that means a used car, that's not settling. That's refusing to hand your cognitive freedom to a lender for 6 years. If that means renting longer than you planned, that's not failure. That's choosing flexibility over a mortgage that turns you into a hostage of your own equity, which isn't even really equity when you owe more than the house is worth, which happens more often than anyone admits. If that means starting with $50 a month into an index fund, that's not insignificant. That is the first brick of a different life. $50 a month, invested consistently for 30 years at an average return, becomes something that would genuinely surprise you, not because the amount is magic, because the habit is. Your parents might not understand. They bought a house for what your car costs now. They had pensions. They didn't pay for health insurance the way you pay for health insurance. Their frame of reference is not your reality, and when they say things like, just save more, or, when I was your age, they're not being cruel, they're being confused. The world they're describing doesn't exist anymore. Your friends on social media will keep posting kitchens you can't afford and vacations you wouldn't enjoy if you had to put them on a credit card. And the culture will keep whispering that you're not enough because you don't have enough. But the math, the real math, the kind I just walked you through, says something different. It says the people who see the gap clearly and refuse to fill it with debt are the ones who eventually close it, not through some windfall, not through a viral side hustle, through the slow, boring, unsexy accumulation of margin. A little room to breathe, a little room to think, a little room to become the person who doesn't flinch when the check arrives. And then, one month, you realize the calculator in the back of your head went quiet. You didn't even notice when it stopped. You just woke up on a Sunday and didn't do the math. And that silence, that's not a number on a paycheck. That's not